Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Oregon HFMA Virtual Enterprise Education One-Day event. Great to have everybody attend. I know there's a lot going on, so thank you for joining us today. So our guest speaker today, you've heard from her. Her name is Cally Christensen. She's going to talk about transitioning from surviving to thriving amidst chaos and uncertainty. And most certainly, we do not have any of that going on right now. So Cally has excelled in the healthcare revenue cycle for over 2 decades. She leverages her passion for patient-centered billing and collections with outstanding culture and communication. She's the Regional Development Director for Professional Credit, an HFMA peer review receivable management company. And Cally builds strategic partnerships with practices, hospital systems to increase recovery, self-pay, and age receivables. She's got a Bachelor in Science and Nonprofit Administration and Social Services from the Metropolitan State University of Denver. She's also a current Rocky Mountain AHAM Vice President and a member of the Arizona HFMA Vice President and Chair of Programs. So please welcome Cally as our guest speaker.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
I told you didn't have to read that whole ding-dong doorknob bio. Oh my goodness, what an amazing opportunity to share time and space with Oregon HFMA. This is my first time. I'm pretty active in Arizona and have been active in Colorado, traveled all across the country within HFMA. And I just want to take my hat off to all of our enterprise members for Oregon HFMA. I can't even imagine. I mean, obviously, we have an operations headquarters in Springfield. Our corporate headquarters is in Vancouver, so we know many of you are in a state of flux. In California, I think they call it ready, set, go. In Oregon, my understanding is level 1, 2, and 3. We know that a lot of you are dealing with angst and not knowing. And boy, it's been, 6 months of that, hasn't it? Or maybe even more, 7 now, because, before we know it, it's going to be October. And so for many of us, I don't know about you, but I feel like my brain is a little broken. We've gone from the pandemic to the politics to the social unrest to now the weather and crisis with the fires. And I'm in Colorado, and we had a little bit of a weather event ourselves. Had some snow, which is the earliest that I remember getting snow in September. It wasn't a lot, but it was definitely enough to have you understand what's coming around the corner. So in Oregon, we know the rainy season's coming. My prayers and thoughts are with you and the teams that you lead, your family, your loved ones. And for right now, for the next hour, I just am so grateful that you're willing to cut out all of the other distractions to the best of your ability and really just be present with us and kind of with what the message is. I kind of think of myself as a reminder as I'm talking about self-care, but it really reminds me a lot of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, many of us remember this from college, kind of psychology 101. Maslow's hierarchy, and if for any of you that have heard me speak before, I usually talk about Maslow. So it's a pyramid, right? And you can't move up in the pyramid until the level below it has been met. So when we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the bottom of the pyramid is the basic needs: food, water, shelter. Then safety, right? Is my family safe? Am I safe? Is my job safe? Can I pay my mortgage? Can I pay my rent? That level of safety. And then the level above it is love. So these are the relationships that you have in your life that support you, right? Not just your colleagues and your coworkers, but your family and your loved ones and your four-leggeds and, the people and places that you go to fill your cup. So all of that's kind of been tossed with the apple cart over the last few months. So the point of today is to help you carve out the building blocks of success, which I call hashtag health hacks. And we're just going to kind of break it down to the ridiculous. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time, covering topics. We do have the chat open. Thank you, Tammy, for the compliment on loving the energy. And to both Kellys, Hooper and Smith, welcome. Thank you. Just for the interest of my focus, I'm not going to be working the chat because I'm going to be presenting. But if you have a specific question that you would like me to answer at the end, if you hover down on the bottom of your screen, you should have an option to do a Q&A. Now, my partner in crime, Tammy Kuhn, is going to help me manage that. But if you have a specific question that you'd like me to address, put that in the Q&A. We're going to use the chat functionality as kind of an informal poll, and we're going to do our first informal poll right now. So if everybody could open up their chat functionality, make sure that they are going to reply to everyone. You've got an opportunity to drop down to all panelists, or all panelists and attendees, if you would select that one, that blue drop down. And I want you to tell me what system you represent. Do we have OHSU? Do we have Providence, Columbia Memorial, Legacy, Salem? Oh, look at the OHSU popping, full represent. Come on, Providence. Oh, I see a Columbia. Let's get Legacy. Yay! I love to see you guys representing. I'd look at the Providence. Good job. We're going to have to count up the tally at the end and see who the ultimate winner was. But we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me for just a second. And I'm going to pull up. So Luke and I had some time yesterday and I had to clean up my desktop, right? Because in this virtual environment, there's like your home office space and coworkers, and then also your desktop is another kind of indicator. So this is my son, Braden. This is Kai, and this is Kana. So this is my family, and they're the ones that share the most time and space with me. So let me go ahead and pull this up. I have no idea. Of course. Yay! Okay, so the first most important thing is I am not a doctor. I don't pretend to be a doctor. I don't play a doctor on TV. I'm not your doctor. I'm definitely not giving you health advice or anything like that. Nothing can take the place of your doctor, so rest assured I'm not giving you any medical advice. The opinions, everything I talk about is my opinion, not that of Haas Group, which is such a great group to represent. Most of you probably know my brother Carl. He's the networking chair for Oregon HFMA, so make sure and twist his tail the next time you see him on the networking reception. So all of these tips and tricks are part of a health hack series that I put together through Haas Group. And we cover kind of some main building blocks of success. The first of which we're going to talk about is sleep and mental health restoration. Then we're going to segue into diet and nutrition. I'm going to talk to you about how to detox. Like, I prefer detox over diet. Can I get an amen on that one? Like, anytime we can detox stress and toxicity out of our bodies, we're going to become a more balanced and authentic version of ourselves. And that's really the key takeaway today is, how do we lead ourselves better? How do we lead our families? How do we lead our teams in this period of chaos and uncertainty, right? And just when we think maybe we're through one, then we get another one. And it literally is causing our brains to be broken, not just from being constantly fired with adrenaline and cortisol in that constant fight or flight, but also like literally a little bit of cognitive dissonance as we look at our world and are trying to wrap our head around what's going on. Like, I talked to my dad the other day and he's like, I watch the news, which I think is his first problem, watching the news, but he watches the news religiously. And he's like, I feel like I'm watching a movie. Like, it's not even, doesn't feel like our country right now. So there are so many things that we can't control, everybody. There's so many things. Everything feels so big and bigger than ourselves. So one of the core competencies of this session is to focus on what you can control. Your sleep, okay? What you put into your body, how you take yucky stuff out of your body? And how do we move our bodies in a world where this is kind of my virtual office, and then I walk 200 feet and there's my living room, and then there's my kitchen. So for somebody that used to spend 70% of her time on the road and on a plane and traveling and seeing your beautiful faces in conferences, now my world is kind of like this, and I go from one screen to the next. So how do we incorporate movement, whether it's functional exercise or just walking our dogs, to get our bodies moving? They say sitting is the new smoking. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to talk about sleep and restoration. When I talk to you about the new normal, like, it's hard. Like, I'm not quite there at the acceptance level yet. Like, we've all pivoted, right? We've deployed remotely. Many of us are still working remote or some sort of hybrid strategy now. Understandably, with the evacuations happening, like, we have employees that, you know, it breaks my heart to tell you, but have not only been evacuated, but have lost property. And so it's really hard to wrap your head around what the new normal is. But as we think back, I mean, think of how much landscape we've covered since really February, right? There's been so many things, constant updates and numbers and effects, that I don't know about you, but this is kind of how I feel. And so what we're going to do is bring up the next chat function. Give me the number one emotion that you're feeling right now. And Tammy, if you could read that out, if there's any specific kind of trend lines that we're seeing for emotions coming up on that chat functionality. How many of you feel like this, and what is it? What's the emotion? Let's name that emotion. Tammy, what are you seeing? Let me see. I think I can pull up the chat too. Let me see if I can do that. Actually, I don't think I can chat. There it is. Overworked, anxious, anxiety. I got it. Overwhelmed. Yeah, kind of like this picture, right? In over our heads. Like, where do we focus, right? Where do we focus our time and energy and attention? I hear you, because when everything feels like a priority, how do you understand what a priority is? Detached. That's kind of a survival mechanism, Stephanie, right? Whether we're cognizant of it or not, at some point we kind of take a step back. And as Tammy talked in my bio, which you didn't have to read, I did go to school for nonprofit and social services. So before I got back into my corporate career, I took a little sabbatical and worked in a homeless shelter. And it was very rewarding, but also very traumatizing as well, because you're really dealing with people that are legitimately at that bottom level of Maslow, the basic needs. And so at some level, we have to kind of take a step back, and either we develop kind of a warped sense of humor. I don't know. We kind of have it in healthcare too, don't we? Like, there's things that we laugh about that if anybody outside of our industry heard us and what we were laughing about, they kind of look at us like, what's going on? But for us, it's really a survival mechanism, right? There's so much of that cognitive dissonance and broken brain syndrome. So what we're going to talk about today are things that you can control, things that you can take action on immediately today to help you and your family and those that you love and care about start beating the fear factor, right? Because as we think about the emotions, a lot of what the core emotion is, whether we recognize it or not, is fear, and fear of the unknown. And in every direction we look, there's question marks. So you guys, the biggest thing, you are not alone. We all feel this. And by showing up today and making time and being present for this, you're taking a great first step in what you can do for self-care. And self-care isn't just salads and sit-ups, right? It's what we can do to make ourselves feel better. And the first building block of success that we're going to focus on is sleep. Now, sleep debt, it used to be like when I was in college, I thought, well, I'll just make it up on the weekend, right? I can skip the week and I'll sleep in on the weekend. It'll be great. But what they're finding now is truly with sleep debt, let me go ahead and close out my chat, people, so you can see me a little bit better. The more that you add to that balance, the bigger it is. Think of it like a credit card, okay? And one of the things that we're going to be talking about in how to protect your brain health is that sleep debt needs to be paid on the reg, on the daily. You're going to hear me say this often, 8 to 10 hours of sleep. You might see 9 to 7, you might see 8 to 10. I guarantee you it's probably a little bit more than what you're getting, right? Because all of us are operating, especially now with work from home. I don't know about you, but like I get a little creep. You know what I mean? Like I'm not necessarily working 8 to 5. It's maybe 7 to, you know, whatever. And don't get me started on Madam President. Tammy Kuhn calls me bright and early. So I'm a huge fan of a strong cup of coffee. So sleep debt, make sure that you are sleeping 8 to 10 hours. We're going to talk a little bit more about creating a sleep sanctuary and things that you can do to make the quality of the sleep that you receive better. Just remember that you can't make it up on the weekend, right? Your brain needs the ability to rest and digest on the daily basis. So I don't expect you to be huge into neuroscience, you guys. We are going to talk about just kind of that anxiety and stress cortisol loop. That was one of the most common emotions that we saw everybody was feeling, anxiety. And when we're constantly wondering what's going to happen next, or if we're going to be evacuated, or if we're going to be able to be safe, what direction the wind is blowing, you know, all of those types of things constantly feed our cortisol levels. So cortisol, many of us have heard, is our body's stress hormone. And when we're constantly living in a fight or flight state, now that they've gotten amazing with brain mapping, they've found that when you are constantly in a fight or flight state and your amygdala is firing that cortisol and your stress hormones, that it actually over a long term causes a type of brain damage, right? And it's more than just I walk out of Target and I can't remember where I parked my car, right? That's kind of what we're going to be talking about with our prefrontal cortex. So that front of our brain, the prefrontal cortex is in charge of our recall and our short-term memory. You know, I've heard it said before, we don't necessarily have a remembering problem, we've got a recall problem. And it's never been more evident than when you walk out of the store and you can't remember where you parked. So your prefrontal cortex, this front part of your brain, is also what differentiates and regulates your thoughts from your actions. And so many of us are in this hyper-triggered state right now just because we're dealing with sleep deprivation, maybe not making good food choices, stressed out about work, stressed out about in every direction that we look. So we're going to talk about how to take back some of that power and how to take care of your brain, because I promise you, my friends, no one cares more about the health and vitality of your brain and your body than you do. So it's really important that you make this a priority, for especially now when we've been dealing with like all this crisis. Like, it's important that you maintain a healthy terrain all the time, healthy immune system. But when you're constantly burning the candle at both ends, like most of us are, it's increasingly important that you break it down to the really important building blocks of success, or health hacks, right? Our brain health. So the amygdala is almost like the shape of an almond. And again, it moderates and maintains our fight or flight mechanism. And the hippocampus is a different part of your brain that regulates how you deal with your emotions and memory. But this fight or flight mechanism that all of us have been living in, that pretty much started, I don't know, February is when I first started hearing some chatter. Now, we didn't go on lockdown in Colorado as quickly as you guys did in Oregon and Washington. You know, we were about 6 to 8 weeks ahead of the rest of the curve. So from a deployment and dealing with the volume and the surges and all of that, you guys have been dealing with it in your part of the neck of the woods for longer than most. But we're all kind of in this constantly triggered state. So it used to be that we didn't think that the brain actually took care of itself, right? We didn't think that it cleansed itself like the rest of the body did with the lymphatic system. But because we've gotten so great at mapping brain science now, they actually have found that when your body goes into its REM cycle, the deepest of the 5 stages of sleep, that your brain actually compresses and rinses out the body's or the brain's waste products with synovial cerebrospinal fluid, and it goes back down through your spinal column, and your body flushes it out. So, but it's only when you're in that deepest state of REM sleep. And so many of my friends and colleagues and loved ones have been constantly sleep deprived. And then what do? We borrow from Peter to pay Paul with sugar and caffeine, which causes inflammation, and then in turn causes more brain damage, right? So the big takeaway, y'all, for why you need the sleep, beyond empowering your body and your brain's ability to clean its own waste products out, and we're going to talk about amyloid plaque here in a little bit, which is one of the main things you want to get out of your brain, but you're able to process information, be more relaxed, be a more authentic version of yourself, less stressed when you get between 8 to 10 hours of sleep. That's a really important takeaway. I know you're probably thinking, I can't see your faces, but you're like, yeah, right, like that's gonna happen. I get 4, maybe 5 hours of sleep. I'm checking my email, I'm grinding it out, Cally. But I'm here to tell you this is one of the single biggest things that you can do to decrease inflammation in your brain and make your brain more sustainable, mitigate risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. We don't want that. It doesn't matter that we're living longer if our quality of life isn't what we want it to be. So again, these are things that you can do to take care of yourself and take care of your brain. So I always like to talk about the nun study. For those of you that have a pen and paper, write it down. This is worth a Google search later. Basically, it was roughly about 700 nuns of Notre Dame that had volunteered to donate their bodies and, more importantly, their brains to science upon passing. And so, nuns aren't probably binge watching Netflix like I have been, or making bad food choices involving Lucky Charms that I probably won't tell you the story about. But what they have done a really good job of is constantly learning, okay? Constantly learning new tasks, new abilities, new skills. And so for these nuns to donate their brains to science, when they ultimately passed, the ages range from 62 to over 100, what they found when they autopsied these nuns' brains was it wasn't that they didn't have the signs of dementia, because they did. They had the tangles, and what we're going to talk about here is the amyloid plaque, which is a byproduct of the waste from your brain synapses, all those firings that are going on. So they found the amyloid plaque. They did find it, but these nuns did not have any signs of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or dementia, any of the things that those neurodegenerative diseases that are becoming so prevalent. What they found was that even though these nuns had the tangles, by constantly learning new skills and new abilities, they were able to rewire and create new synapses, so the brain became more resilient. And that is a main differentiator. So as hard as it is to get out of our comfort zone, it's not really like we've had a comfort zone for the last 7 months anyway. It's not like, hey, I used to play the trumpet in elementary school, so I'm going to bring that up again. It's, I've never learned Italian. I've always wanted to learn it, so I'm going to learn a new skill, a new ability. That builds the resiliency of your brain, and that, on top of getting additional sleep, 8 to 10 hours a night, is really setting yourself up to succeed as far as having a more resilient brain. So the sleep sanctuary piece is really important. I am going to talk to you first about disconnecting. What I mean by that is we kind of all, and I think it was the millennials, no offense, my millennials, I love you. But I think you pretty much brought out the hashtag fear of missing out, right? I can't stop, I can't disconnect. I mean, I grew up in an analog childhood. People still read the newspaper and watched the news. It was crazy. But for my house and my family, we disconnect from all of our screens 1 hour before we go to bed. And I know it's hard. It feels like, oh my God, I might miss an email or whatever it is. But actually powering down your tech and focusing on simple things like we read, or we'll talk about our day, or just really kind of connect at that human level. But the big takeaway here is disconnect from your blue screens about an hour before you're ready to go to sleep. The second thing is have a tech-free bedroom, okay? So I know, I travel all across the country, and the first thing people think and usually say is, but wait a minute, my smartphone is my alarm clock. And my joke is, you guys, I am so old that I remember alarm clocks that were actual alarm clocks. They were an alarm clock, that's what they were, and it was their only function. And so if you don't want to do that, if you're convinced that you need to have your cell phone in your room as your alarm clock, I hear you, my people. Just make sure that it's 3 to 5 feet away from your head, okay? Because when you're sleeping, your body is in that rest and digest mode. So you're either in fight or flight, cortisol firing, or your body's able to do rest and digest. So the rest and digest is when the body cleans its inner terrain, and it's really important that you just consider having a tech-free room, please. So the second thing, I know we talked about this, have it cool in your room. They say between 60 and 65 is a great temperature to have. You'll have good sleep. And you've heard me say it so many times, 8 to 10 hours. Ideally, you would get to the point, and I know it's a goal, right? Start where you are, work towards the goal, that you can fall asleep and wake up without an alarm clock, just when your body normally senses that it's time to get up and you're well rested. So it can be a struggle, I know, but it gives us something to focus on. And so we'll talk about that more as we move forward. Diet and nutrition. How many of you remember you are what you eat? That was certainly a major part of how I was raised. And although I probably don't eat like this all the time, the important thing that I'd like you to consider is to eat the rainbow. And no, I know you think I'm talking Skittles here, you guys, but the more colorful your fruits and vegetables are, and the closer they are to the whole food that it looks like when it comes, you know, not from a box, a bag, or a can, but how it comes out in the garden. If you've started dabbling in gardening, like myself and my son, we had a lot of failures, but we had a couple really good successes with our tomato plants. Those are like the only thing that has actually grown. But you want to vary the colors, because each color has a different nutritive value. So while fresh is always the best, you're going to work within what your budget allows. So fresh is best, and then we've got frozen, and then good is canned. But the most important thing is just understand, start wherever your budget will allow, okay? So don't get stressed out about not being able to always buy fresh. Just try to consume more plants. Now, I'm not vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I eat meat. We do some gardening. The important thing is you want to try to increase your healthy fats as much as you can. That helps your brain, okay? There was so long that they told us that saturated fat was bad for us, right? But now we know that saturated fat is good for our skin, good for our hair, and good for our brain health as well. So it's really important that you try to eat as much fruits and vegetables as you can. Remember, I'm a reminder. I'm like your mom and your grandma, just reminding you. Try to eat food in its natural state, okay? So food naturally shouldn't come from a box, a bag, or a can. And we all have a little bit more time, maybe, and some new coworkers to help us with meal planning, prepping, and, you know, maybe even some cleanup too. I don't know how it works in your family. But some of the benefits of nutrition, again, just breaking it back to why it matters to you. Let's talk about inflammation. It's public enemy number one, you guys. Inflammation is one of the biggest reasons for chronic conditions that we're dealing with. And so it's kind of like that silent killer. And one of the biggest areas of inflammation is sugar. So we're going to talk about that here in a bit. It'll also make your body more effective and efficient in obtaining and retaining nutrients, and obviously boosting brain health, right? Because that's what it's all about, your brain and your body. So for those of you that are interested, Haas Group put together a free download, kind of a quick reference, if you will, of what colors offer what nutrients and what vitamins. And we'd be happy to send that out as a small gift to all of the attendees. Tammy Kuhn, my right hand, and I will figure out how to send that out to you. And I hope that you find value from it. If you have any questions on it, feel free to get back to me. But sometimes it feels like, okay, Cally, you've thrown all of this at me. How do I get started? Like, where do I focus? One of the first areas that I seriously recommend you guys is to cut your sugar. It is everywhere. Sugar is everywhere. It's super ubiquitous in our society, and it takes names that we would have never even actually thought was sugar. Decreased refined carbs. Now, I will tell you again, like I gained my quarantine 19, probably closer to 22 pounds in the beginning because I was emotionally eating, and I don't think I was alone. I'm sure a lot of us probably felt like that. But over the last couple months when it's nice and I can move my body more, kind of that functional movement, and I really focused on the gut. It's really important. 70% of our immune system, you guys, is found in our gut. So any type of probiotic, whether you're taking a pill or a solution, I'm a huge fan of fermented food. So if you like spicy, I recommend a kimchi. If you like sauerkraut, that's a great option to go as well. Or maybe even a kavita or a kombucha. Anything you can do to kind of increase the diversity of your microbiome is going to increase the strength and vitality of your immune system. And then we talked again about the healthy fats, whether it's nuts, eggs, avocado. Chocolate is a personal favorite of mine. Anything in moderation. So what do we not do? Well, I have to tell you that it wasn't until I went on a 10-day elimination diet that I even realized that I had a gluten sensitivity. And then I tried it again, and I didn't realize how much fatigue and brain fog and just, I mean, I was tired, and I would hit kind of the wall in the afternoon, and I couldn't figure out why, because I was getting sleep. I now know it wasn't enough sleep. It was 6 to 7. Now I'm at 8 to 10. Genetically modified food, Frankenfood, can cause a lot of digestive upset, irritable bowel syndrome. We've seen a lot of digestive issues. So I'm a huge fan, where you can, of going organic and avoiding the pesticides load. And that's really important for our littles in our life that have smaller body mass and are really consuming these things on the daily. If your budget doesn't allow you to go completely organic, I feel you. I would ask that you consider I would recommend that you would consider moving to meat and dairy. So if your animal products are organic, then that's a great place to start. And you can go to the environmental working group, ewg.org, and they'll kind of give you the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, what you can buy conventional, and what they strongly recommend you look for organic in your fruits and vegetables. Dairy was another thing. I can't drink milk anymore. I can eat cheese once in a while, but again, a lot of these things fly under the radar screen of what could possibly be causing your fatigue and your brain fog, or even crabby Appleton. I've been fighting a little crabby Appleton myself recently. So some detox strategies. I prefer detox over diet any day of the week. And so when you empower your body to do its job, like our bodies are so smart, and they've been, our immune systems have been around for a really long time. So we just kind of have to get out of our body's way sometimes. And one of the biggest areas of exposure that we get that we need to detox are heavy metals. And women, I hate to tell you this, but a lot of our exposure comes from our skincare and our home care products. So again, environmentalworkinggroup.org, EWG.org has a great app that you can download and actually scan things at the store before you buy them and get the score for what the load would be of toxins and things like that. Around the house, I literally pretty much just use apple cider vinegar, baking soda, some thieves. I try not to use the heavy metal, like the, Clorox and that kind of stuff. Now, if that's something that you like from a disinfectant side, that's absolutely fine. Just understand the heavy metals can be a bit of an exposure risk. Also with the pesticides, we talked about that. That's increasingly in the news. we are going to have exposure to viruses, bacteria, things that, I mean, I remember when I worked in the homeless shelter, like the first year that I worked there, I caught everything. And then I thought, certainly my immune system will be that of an ox at this point. And it pretty much was. So if any of us have kids that are back in school now, I know that can be kind of a sensitivity issue, as far as like they can't even really have a cold now. It's a heck of a time for allergies, I'll tell you that much, especially with all the smoke in the air. But again, when you clear your inner terrain, then your body can do its job more efficiently and effectively. One of the things that I want to just touch on really quick is EMF and radiation. So this is a huge reason, you guys, why I've asked for you to consider taking your phones out of your bedroom, because your phone is always on. And the weaker the signal, the stronger the phone is working, or the more radiation it's emitting to try to capture that signal. So when you're sleeping again, your body's in its best form of rest and digest, which is when it clears everything out and really kind of hits the reset button. So it's important, like in my house, what we do is when it's time for bed, I disconnect the Wi-Fi. And, that doesn't take care of my neighbor's Wi-Fi or anything like that, but at least I can control what I can control. And so when I presented this one in Minnesota, one of my favorite millennials came up after the session. She said, but what about all of the things that we have tied to, our smart fridge and our Nest and our Alexa and our Google Home? You don't want to have to reset all of those things. So you're going to have to make decisions based on what makes sense for you and your family. I'm just asking you to consider that, like, many of us live in a metropolitan area, and there could be up to 20 different Wi-Fi signals that we're living under. Also with Bluetooth technology, which has kind of become ubiquitous, just be cognizant of all of these areas or types of exposure that you're getting that maybe we didn't used to have. So just be cognizant of where those exposure risks are coming from. Food toxicity, we've talked about this. I'm going to move this around. Sorry, you guys. Teflon has been out for a while. And for those of you that are interested in doing some of your own research on this, I actually just hit the red box, and there's a movie that just came out, and it's called Dark Waters. And Dark Waters is talking about DuPont and kind of their creation of Teflon. It is definitely worth a red box, because what this is they're called PFOAs, and they're pretty much called forever chemicals. And this is the things that, they're made by either 3M or DuPont or chemical companies that do like the Stain Master, the Stain Tech, the waterproofing, Teflon, all of these things that make our lives so easy and convenient. There's increasing research, and there will be links at the end of the presentation. We'll send this out to all of you if you'd like to click in and do your own research, because that would be the biggest honor that you could give me, is not to take me at face value, but to do your own research into Teflon. Make sure that if you still have Teflon pans, get rid of them. In my family, we use cast iron. We use a lot of glass, Pyrex, things of that nature. We don't have a microwave, haven't had a microwave in almost 2 decades. I think at this point, we've all pretty much heard don't heat things in plastic because of BPA. That's a neuroendocrine disruptor as well. And these are chemicals that tend to bioaccumulate in our body, you guys. So what I mean by that is we start when we're littles, and then year over year, we're accumulating more and more. So unless we make a concerted effort to chelate and detox this stuff out of our body, it can work to cross that blood-brain barrier. And, that's the last thing that anybody needs. So just be really mindful of how you consume your food and how you prepare your food. So as we move through into the detox, probably the biggest area of detox is emotional detox right now. And I have to tell you, I have not been happier at any point in the last 8 months than when I stopped watching the news. I got to the point where I was constantly, the alerts, the flags, the dings, the numbers, the this, the that. It felt like it fractured my brain. And if you remember, it started in spring, and it was like, the most beautiful spring, but we couldn't even really wrap our head around it because we're so hooked into the fear and kind of that lower vibrational emotion that personally and professionally affect us as we move through the world. And, you know, it's almost to the point where we're running on fear, and I'm here to ask that you fight those lower vibrations, that you lead with grace and compassion with each other and yourself, more importantly. If you're getting triggered, if you have a bad event, like something happened, you know, you're like, I'm worried about losing my house, Cally. Like, you don't understand. Like, at any point, they can call me and tell me that the stuff that I have in my car, now we have to go, and this might be everything that I have. So when feels so hard to even survive, right? You have to focus on what you can control. And there's so many things that are bigger than us on the daily that what I'd like for you to consider, I love this one from Lao Tzu. I'm not going to read it to you because I know that you all can read. I will move this so you can see me. And the quote from Lao Tzu, I consciously work every day to be grateful and to appreciate all of the blessings that I have. And we are blessed. We are on the job. We have the ability to still support ourselves and our friends and our families. We have the ability to create change and affect our patients and our customers in a positive way. Because as scared as we are, we can now think of Maslow and understand that we are at a higher level working on, you know, love and a safety, and many of our patients and customers are at that basic level, right? And they're sick and they're scared, and then they're worried about the evacuation, and then they're worried about not being able to take care of their family. So as much as you can cultivate an attitude of gratitude, build it into your daily practice. Like, I wake up every morning now and I'm so grateful that we have today, because it doesn't even seem like we're promised that anymore, right? There's been so much happening that we just, you know, we want to think globally, but act locally. And sometimes it could just be leading with grace and compassion and empathy with someone at the grocery store. That might be, politics aside, right? It doesn't matter if you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream or strawberry ice cream. We are all humans, and this is a human condition. So try to cultivate content and gratitude, and rejoice in the blessings that you have. I know sometimes we have to work to try and find them, but it's a little bit easier when we shut off the news. Now, I'm not saying don't stay informed. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be really conscious of what you allow into your life as an input, right? Because our inside world is what we can control, that internal locus of control, not everything out there, right? But we can take care of ourselves. So it's really important, as we're starting to wrap up, that we think about managing the monsters, what we think, what we say, what we do, and how we talk to ourselves, right? These are the things that we can control. What we think about others, like, are we being judgy McJudgersons, right? Are we saying or doing things that maybe aren't the most authentic version or representation of ourselves? And then how do we talk to ourselves? Like, this goes way back to kind of how we were raised and how we were brought up, but you can course correct, right? And how we teach our kids to talk to themselves and become resilient and have grit. Like, those are the things that we can control as we're trying to manage the monsters. So as we're talking about like detoxing and strategies and things of that nature, I would love to hear, and Tammy, I'm going to try and bring up, I'm going to pause the share. Ooh, I can pause the share. And let's see the chat. I want to hear, what are your things, you guys? Like, what is your detox thing? Like, what are you going to focus on? Everybody's probably going to have a different deal. So in our informal chat poll, chat to me, my people. Tell me what the first thing you're going to focus on. Tammy Kuhn says sleep. That means you're not going to be working like all hours of the day, Tammy? Is that Is that what you're promising? Tammy George says sugar. Absolutely. Moving the phone away from your nightstand. Perfect. So I hear what Kelly Smith is saying is, I'm not going to take it out of my room, but I'll move it away from my nightstand. And you know what? We'll take that. We will definitely take that. I've had people tell me they sleep with it under their pillow. It's like, how do you ever get any good sleep? Sugar, 100% sugar. Okay, so we have a quick second. I'm going to tell you about my sugar story. For those of you that would like to maybe get a little bit more or want to take a different version of this series, Unplugging Before Bed, Mike. Good job. Mike, how long? How long are you committing? How long are you going to unplug before bed, Mike? Let's see. Let's see what he's... 1 hour! Yay! Round of applause to Mike Polly. I don't know who's going to hold you accountable, Mike. You're going to have to keep us posted. But I was doing some emotional sugar eating. And for those of you that are interested in hearing about my Lucky Charms incident, I do have one other thing for you. Oh, I stopped sharing. I'm going to come back. I'm going to share one more time. I'm going to give you, for those of you that like to do social media, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please ask for me. Let's link up on LinkedIn. And then you can also get another viewing of this self-care series. For those of you that go to the YouTube, you can search Haas Group. We definitely need you to like and subscribe to our channel because we're just getting started on this. But I have it on good authority. I've heard some chatter from a little birdie that Mr. Jeff Johnson might be adding some content on this as well. So this will be a different take on this series. You got more of a consolidated version, but if you'd like to tap in again, this is available to you at any time. So with that, Tammy, I know we've got a couple minutes left. Let's see if anybody has any questions and answers. Does anybody have any Q&A for me or things that really resonated with them? You can put it in the chat. You can put it in the Q&A, whatever's easiest for you. What's one thing that I know we talked about kind of cutting back on sugar, getting the phone away from your bed, unplugging, what else? What did you love or what was interesting to you? Give me some feedback, my people. I can't see you. Oh, thank you, Luke. Thank you. Yes, the links will be sent out. I will send out the handouts as well. Thank you, Kelly Hooper. I want to give a special thanks to Marie and her program committee as well for giving me this opportunity to come and share space and time with you. I can't wait till we're together again. So we can kind of hug it out. I'm a hugger, even if it's a healthcare handshake, little fist bump.
You are a hugger.
I'm what?
You are a hugger.
I am a hugger. I am. And I've had to really kind of rein that in. So everyone's probably happy that it's virtual. But I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tammy. We'll make all the links available for everybody. And what a blessing this was. Thank you for this opportunity.